It also seems fair because there's not really a Social Security advisor
Fair.
that you can just go out and hire. It somewhat relies on financial advisors to learn. And it's also hard sometimes to know if the financial advisor is giving you good, either because are they technical enough to understand it, or do they have ulterior motives?
Yeah.
Or, so that I think that can be hard too. Welcome to the Zacc Call Money Education Channel. Today we're going to begin the Social Security planning season. We just finished 2 major seasons. The last one, season 2, was all about that Roth. It was a pretty big hit. I feel like we got a lot of engagement from you, a lot of comments. It was a lot of fun. And then before that, we talked about income planning and all the different aspects of managing your cash flow to build a better financial future. So income planning, all about that Roth. And now we are beginning Social Security planning. This is so important. People don't realize this is the first and one of the first steps of getting into retirement. If you can stay with us, you will know so much more than the average retiree. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about why this is so important. But before we go any further, remember, if you want to be updated on these episodes as they come, hit subscribe. We're going to do, right now we have scheduled something like 9 to 13 different seasons and several between 3 to 8 episodes per season, diving deep into various topics. So like and subscribe, whatever it is that you do, because I don't really understand social media that well. And more importantly, let's talk about who we have here today, this is Tyler Williamson. Thanks for coming on, Tyler.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Zacc.
Tell us who you are and where you come from.
Yeah, my name is Tyler Williamson. I'm a partner and wealth advisor here at Capita Financial Network.
So Tyler has done about 50 presentations on Social Security every year. Is that what we figure out? It's about 50 a year.
Yeah.
And you take some vacation time. So that means there more than once a week, you are teaching Social Security from start to finish and getting people in a much better place on their strategies. So I feel like you've come across, I don't mean to hype him up too much, but because Tyler's super humble and he'll defend that, but he has come across so many different situations. So Tyler will join us for the entire season in the same way that Tyson Long, one of our other wealth advisors at Capita, joined us for the entire season of Roth. Okay, this season is all about Social Security. It's called Social Security Planning. This first episode, we're going to lay the groundwork for you. In episode 2, we're going to go over the 9 essential truths about how your wages impact Social Security. Then we'll cover things like how you choose to take your benefit and how that changes the calculation around how much you'll get. We'll talk about spousal strategies, divorce and death planning, which is tough and difficult, but it is a factor in Social Security. We'll get into what's called finding your break-even age, and that gets very deep into the math, which I feel like based on the comments, a lot of you are going to love. And then lastly, we're going to bring all of that together and talk about how do you make this decision of when to file. Okay, Tyler, starting with laying the groundwork. Why is Social Security so important in a retirement plan?
That is a great question, Zacc. And for most retirees, Social Security ends up being, replacing 60 to 70% of a retiree's income, right, in retirement. And so it's really critical that they get this decision right. If it's going to replace 60 or be 60% of their fixed income in retirement, they've got to get this decision right. And when you file and how you file and which benefit you file for has a lot to do with how much that benefit will be and how successful you'll be in retirement in terms of, your income plan.
Yeah, we talk about it in a 3-legged stool, right? There's Social Security, then there's fixed income like pensions or rental income, and then withdrawals from the portfolio.
Exactly.
And the withdrawals from the portfolio are going to vary quite a bit depending on which Social Security strategy you choose to use. And I feel like there's a lot of variability. I'm thinking of an example of a lady that I met once that had been married 3 times. 2 spouses had passed away. 1 was still living. And she was eligible to pick up a survivor benefit off of one of the 2, but not the other one because they hadn't been married long enough before the person passed, but she wasn't married to him now. And then there was the most recent one that we were saying like, okay, keep tabs if he's still alive, because if he dies, that could change everything. Right. And there's your own benefit. Which one should you take now? Which one should you take later? There is so much involved with this. Before we got started, you were talking a little bit about people's confidence in Social Security, their knowledge, and how they choose to go about learning about it. Tell us more about what's going on there.
And Zacc, the example you just gave is interesting because for a lot of listeners, they might listen to that example and say, well, who does that apply to, right? That doesn't apply to the masses. But how often do we see retirees that come into our office and they have a unique situation like that, right? Where they've got maybe multiple ex-spouses and a deceased spouse, and they've got children who are underage that may be entitled to benefits off of a living or a deceased parent. So as abnormal as that situation might sound, we actually see it quite often. So recently, just this year, 2025, Nationwide did a study, and they asked, I think it was a study of 1,800 respondents, and they asked about their confidence in Social Security. How confident are you in your knowledge and your ability to file for Social Security or understand Social Security? And I want to say the number was like 62% of the respondents did not feel confident in their knowledge of Social Security. Yet when they asked how many of those respondents would feel comfortable doing all the planning, right?
On their own,
making these decisions without a professional in their lives, 70 some odd percent, or maybe 60% of them said, we're comfortable doing it on our own. So we have all these people saying, I don't know anything about Social Security, or I'm not confident in my abilities, but yet they want to go out and make these decisions on their own without the help of a professional. And so that seemed really backwards to me.
Yeah, it also seems fair because there's not really a Social Security advisor that you can just go out and hire, It somewhat relies on financial advisors to learn. And it's also hard sometimes to know if the financial advisor is giving you good, either because are they technical enough to understand it, or do they have ulterior motives? Or, so that I think that can be hard too.
Well, what I found was interesting though, was that they weren't even willing to go seek advice.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. So they're saying, I don't really understand this, but I'm also not willing to go look for the help that might be out there, whether that's from the Social Security Administration or from some expert in our industry or in the tax industry or wherever that might be. They're not willing to go look for that guidance and that help that they might be.
Hopefully this season takes care of that, right? That a lot of people, I think, a lot of you DIYers out there are going to be like, I got enough. I can do this myself. I've gotten so much more information about this. And then, of course, if anybody wants to chat with us about it, they can. This is actually a big part of how Capita started. Capita would go around and teach to employers in Utah about Social Security, and it was specifically you and Mike would go and they would invite you in, you'd teach them about it, and then many people would be like, okay, here's my situation, what should I do? And then you guys would square them away, and in many cases, they would never become a client.
Right.
You were just doing that for a free consultation, get them taken care of on Social Security in particular. And then we found that a lot of people would come back and say, okay, what else do you do? And then that helped grow our advisory practice.
That's exactly right.
So those are the roots of Capita. And I think that has continued. That's why we have this channel, is because we're all about free education, get as much information out there as possible, free consultations, put people in a better place. And then inevitably, someone of those people, they're going to say, hey, I'd like to know more about Capita long term.
Yeah, exactly.
So we believe that Social Security is foundational within an overall cash flow plan. We specifically start with Social Security and we optimize across 3 or 4 different strategies. That's going to be at the very end. We're going to get into that in the last few episodes within this season, talking about break-even ages and exact filing strategies. But we can't even get there until you know a few key terms. So, Tyler, explain to us PIA. I'm going to keep throwing acronyms at you, and then it's your job to help clarify.
You got it.
PIA.
Okay, primary insurance amount. And all that is it's a retiree's full Social Security benefit at their full retirement age. Now, full retirement age, you're going to talk about that acronym in a second, but that varies, right? Person by person, birth year by birth year. But the PIA, simplistically, is the amount of Social Security they're entitled to at their full retirement age.
And full retirement age, for those listening, is the FRA acronym. So the benefit that you're eligible to get when you reach your full Social Security age is your PIA at FRA.
Bingo.
And that's what, people get really confused about those two things, right? PIA is super important because as we begin to extract all this knowledge from Tyler around like spousal benefits and survivor benefits, a lot of it stems from PIA. That's the first number that you start with. And then the benefits are a percentage of PIA depending on how old you are when you go ahead and ask for the benefit.
That's exactly right. And there's a lot of misconceptions about how those benefits are calculated, but a lot of them stem back to that original number, right? PIA. So it is really important that people understand what their PIA is. But not only theirs, it's important they understand if they're married or if they're divorced or if they have a spouse that's passed away, that they understand what the spouse's PIA was, right? Because their benefits could be correlated based on that number.
Right. I was talking to a client yesterday that basically said, I think I'm going to file early. And there were reasons that made sense for him to file early. He was worried that his wife would pick up half of his reduced benefit, but it's not. She would be eligible if she files on time to pick up half of his PIA.
Exactly.
So this is where PIA becomes so important. And we're going to go into that like math and spousal strategies in another episode, but I just wanted to introduce that concept to everybody. Yeah. Okay, another acronym for you, FICA. Who is FICA and why are they taking all of our money?
Great question. I wonder the same thing when I look at my pay stub.
That's actually the direct quote from my wife, by the way. She said, who's FICA and why are they taking all of our money?
Why are they stealing my money?
Long time ago.
That's funny. Okay, FICA stands for Federal Insurance Contributions Act, which was signed into law back in 1935. And the idea, Social Security is a social insurance program, right? And so the idea is that they would collect taxes from our payroll that would help fund Social Security and Medicare. So as employees, we pay a portion of our salaries or our hourly wages, whatever, into or through FICA, and that goes to help fund Social Security and Medicare.
Got it. Okay. So, and we'll cover a lot of that in episode 2.
Yeah.
What's coming up next? I'll tell you exactly how FICA goes in and PIA comes out. That is episode 2, which it is super important you understand that because there is strategy to that if you know how all the math works. So we'll cover that in our next one. So, okay, I think that's it. Are there any other acronyms that you feel like are needed? We'll hit them if we get there.
Can't think of any.
Okay. Okay, so what is the difference between retirement and filing for Social Security benefits, and why does that get so confusing for people?
This is a great question, and it is so confusing. Everybody confuses these two, right? We see in our industry here at Capita, we see a lot of people who will retire from work and hold off on filing for Social Security. But a lot of people, they'll come in and they'll tell us, I retired. And what they mean by that is I filed for Social Security. But retirement and filing for Social Security are two completely different things that we should differentiate in our minds. So we see people, like I mentioned, that will retire and then hold off on filing, or they will file for Social Security and continue working and not retire yet, right?
Yeah, and I think this is partly confusing because the Social Security Administration uses the same word for filing. They
Correct.
use both terms, either file for benefits or retire.
Retirement, yeah.
They're like, would you like to retire? And I think the worker's thinking, no, I'd like to file for benefits. And the Social Security Administration is saying
That's
same
retirement.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the confusion comes from the way the Social Security language is written and the people that you may talk to on the phone if you do choose to call them.
Agreed.
And okay, so that's the difference. Just be aware that you do not have to retire in the sense that you are thinking in order to get Social Security benefits. And you may choose to retire and not get Social Security benefits. Those don't have to be the same thing. It seems like before we can get into strategy, before we can talk much about anything around Social Security, the first thing that people need to understand is it even going to be there for me? And I feel like I've been in this industry. I've been in the industry for 20 years now. And for the entire time, I've been talking to people and everyone says, Social Security won't be there for me.
Right.
And yet here it is, 2 decades later, still paying out. Obviously, there are solvency concerns. What are those? Clue us in. How much should we worry?
Yeah, great question, Zacc. So this morning I woke up, I was reading through the news. One of the headlines stated, Social Security is running out of money, right? We see these headlines all the time. A lot of them are clickbait, right? They want you to click into the article, and once you start reading the article, you realize, okay, it's not as bad as the headline led me to believe. A lot of what the news states or the headlines of their articles, it truly leads us to believe that it's not going to be there. But let me share some facts with you. Right now, there's enough money in the trust fund to pay full benefits through the year 2034. It's 2025. We have 9 years of the fund being able to pay full benefits. In 2034, the Social Security Trust Fund has told us that they would have to reduce benefits by 19%. In other words, only 81% would be payable from 2034 and beyond. So if you've got a $1,000 monthly Social Security benefit, they wouldn't be able to continue to pay that same amount all the way through. They could only pay you $810. So you might get a letter in 2034 that says, we can't pay you $1,000, but we can pay you $810. That $810 or 81% is fully funded through the year 2099. So is it running out of money? Is it all going to go to zero? Are all of the checks going to dry up? No, that is not the reality. The reality is they may have to reduce benefits in the future. I think you and I are probably on the same page that the administration, that Congress, who is the governing body on Social Security, will get their act together. There will be some sort of reform proposal that will ensure that this program is around for future generations. I always get the question, I'm 42, we're about the same age, and I always get the question of, do you think it's going to be there for you? And I answer very confidently, yes.
Oh, funny. I always say no.
You always say no.
I always say no. I'm like, it'll be fine for you, but for me, I'm not counting on it.
No. I truly believe it's going to be there, right? But I think my parents, when they were my age, would have said, no, I don't think it's going to be there for me. And here we are all these years later, and I truly think over the next 20 years, when I become eligible for Social Security, I think it's going to be there. Is it going to look the same as it looks for current retirees? No. It's going to look different.
Yeah, to clarify, I think it will not. I don't think I'll get much because I think the people who have saved will eventually be like means tested out.
Maybe you're right.
Or taxed too much, or like people who have prepared well for retirement who are currently 40 years old, or that's my gut. So I'm planning for my own retirement as if it won't be there. And if I get anything, great. But if I was 60 years old right now trying to figure it out, I would count on it, obviously for the next decade for sure. And then beyond that, I truly do believe that reform will happen or changes will happen, but not because I'm super confident in our government getting their act together. It's not a vote of confidence in Congress. It is a vote of confidence in the voting body.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people from the baby boomer generation who will vote, and they will figure out how to make sure that they're protected. I do think that there'll be some higher taxes and a few other things that can happen.
That's interesting you say that. From that same nationwide study, 78% of respondents said they will vote for a candidate based on their stance regarding Social Security.
Not surprised.
Yeah, not surprised at all. But I agree with you. If I'm working with a retiree who's, later 50s, early 60s, I have high confidence that benefit's going to be there, and it's probably going to be there in the same form or fashion that it is today, with maybe some slight tweaks, right? One of the main reform proposals that Congress has talked about, or a lot of the different politicians, is increasing taxes, right? So the Social Security trustees came out and they said they would need to raise FICA taxes by 3.6% to get it fully funded. That's 1.8% from the employee and 1.8% from the employer. Now, that's no small amount of money. For someone making $100,000 a year, that's $1,800 of additional FICA taxes that they would have to pay, or about $150 a month. That's a lot of money, and it adds up. But if we all got on the same page, 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, and we said, hey, would we all be willing to pay an extra 1.8% to ensure that this is going to be here long term? I think that we would probably all get on board with that. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, you're pretty optimistic. I think that's good. I think that's really great. Getting on the same page, probably not. But having a majority vote to say this is what we're doing, yeah, I could see that happening for sure.
Yeah. I don't think it's as drastic as the media leads us to believe, right? Again, going back to clickbait, the authors of these articles, they love when you click on their article. And
right, that's how they get paid.
Exactly. So the headlines are always going to lead you to believe that things are worse than they really are.
Yeah, so what I've learned is the title of this episode needs to be Social Security is running out of money.
It's running out. You'll get more clicks.
You'll get so many. We're not very good at that, by the way, the clickbait thing. Okay, so I think let's move forward. Obviously, if people have more concerns and want to understand more about the trust fund and the math and how all that works, that's, of course, a conversation that we can have with you. But we're going to operate for the rest of this season under the assumption that for someone who's at the door of retirement right now, that Social Security benefits will remain intact under the current math, under the current dollars and benefits without that 19% reduction.
I would agree with that.
Because we've actually seen that number change. It used to say 25% reduction and different years, and it just keeps moving based on the investment performance and contributions and all of that.
Yeah.
So I think we call it good with that until somebody wants to talk about it more. We're going to cover real strategies, real case studies, again, for future conversations. You know, for somebody who doesn't make that much income, Social Security, while they're working, I'm talking about, Social Security replaces a high percentage of it. If you're making $60,000 and you move to a $30,000 or $40,000 benefit, that's half to 2/3 replacement, right? But if you're making $500,000 a year or more and you're going down to $60,000 of Social Security, it's really not that much, a little over 10, 11, 12% replacement, right? But for whatever reason, and I don't know if it's just that the wealthy are accustomed to optimizing everything in their lives, but even wealthy and high-income people really care and want to optimize Social Security strategies. And there's a concern and there's a fear. Now, at the same time, they may have a lot of money, but they don't have a lot of security in their cash flow. Like withdrawing from a portfolio doesn't feel nearly as comfortable as a pension does.
Right.
So it feels like to me a lot of wealthy people, second reason why they may care about Social Security is it's a pretty safe cash flow for them. And it's inflation adjusted.
Right.
So it's pretty strong for that reason. And then the third reason I think that wealthy people may really like to optimize Social Security is they're like, I have paid so much tax. I am getting as much back as I possibly can. It's almost like they're sticking it to the man.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
But anyway, it feels like even wealthy people shouldn't like snooze on the idea of optimizing their Social Security plan. And wealthy people who are thinking about Roth conversions might want to coordinate their Social Security plan to be able to move more pre-tax dollars to Roth over the course of a few years in between. We talked about it last season, what we call the Valley of Opportunity.
Yes. A lot of strategy that goes in there, especially when it comes to Roth conversions.
Totally. Okay, so let's wrap this up so we can dive into the meat of it all. This is important. People don't feel confident doing it on their own. They don't necessarily have great resources. We're hoping to provide that with this season. And I can promise anybody who watches all of the episodes, we think there's going to be 6 or 7. We're adapting it as we go. If you watch these episodes, you're going to know Social Security so much better, frankly, better than most financial advisors out there, in my opinion. I don't have a measurement for that. I'm just guessing, but better than most of the public that we run into. For sure.
I would say they might even understand it better than the Social Security Administration themselves.
That's true. They at the administration, they know how to push the buttons to file it, but they oftentimes are, well, I know they're discouraged from getting too strategic.
Yes.
Because there's risk.
I don't think they're allowed to share strategies, right? And share ideas of how a retiree could maximize their benefits. I don't think they're allowed to dive into those conversations.
Well, there's way too much risk.
Yeah.
If I was running the Social Security Administration, I'd tell them to do the same thing. Like you have no upside to getting that and taking that risk and potentially being wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, let's dive in. Our next episode will be 9 essential truths about how your wages shape your Social Security. So, of course, this is educational in nature. You can find so much more information on CapitaFinancialNetwork.com. My name is Zacc. I'm the president of Capita Financial. Tyler's with us for the entire season. Glad to have you with us today.
Thanks for having me.